Hi, so in this video I'm going to show you an example lesson. This is a grammar lesson. Generally it's aimed at kind of teenagers to adults. It's not a young learner lesson, and the level is kind of intermediate to advanced. You could adapt this to fit different levels. Okay, so the grammar point of this is used to. Okay, and here are some example expressions you can see in red. I used to play soccer. I used to have a pet dog. Koreans used to wear hanbok. Okay, so those are the kind of expressions that this lesson is focused on. Okay, now during the lesson, have a look at the green text that I've put on each slide. The green text gives you hints about what I'm doing and the reasons and purposes for different parts of the lesson. Okay, so let's get started. Now, used to. Think about used to for a moment. Now, used to is related to things that we did in the past. Okay, so first what I want to do is set the context of the lesson. So I show this picture to the students and I tell them, okay, here's a cartoon picture of me and have a look at this. So I used to play with toys when I was wearing a yellow t-shirt. I used to go to school. I used to go to college. I used to work in a business, whatever. Okay, so I'm setting up this idea of used to, okay, things that we did in the past. Okay, so you could talk about that a little bit, give some examples. Okay, here's a question on the slide. How have you changed? So that's the topic of today. How have you changed over time? What did you used to do? And what did you used to like, right? I used to study in a school. I used to like toys. Those are some examples. Now, notice I'm setting up the context here, and I'm also giving examples. Okay, so this is kind of scaffolding for later on. Okay, so here are some more model examples, and these are clear photos that give you a specific kind of model or example of the language in use. Okay, so the question is, what did you used to do? Now look at the picture in 2011 and now. What am I doing that's different? Okay, so in 2011, I'm riding a bike. And now I'm sitting in a restaurant eating food. Okay, so let's read the sentence together. I used to go for long bike rides, but now I don't. Okay, so this is something I did in the past, but now I don't. Can you guess why I don't now? Yep, it's because I have children. Okay, so I don't have any time for going on nice, long daytime bike rides. Okay, so I used to go for long bike rides in 2011 and before, but now I don't. Okay, so here are some more model examples, and again, it's really important that you provide examples. You set the context, you teach the meaning of the language through examples and pictures, but yeah, you also need to model the structures and give some examples. So okay, what did you used to do? Here are some examples about me. I used to go out in Hongdae, but now I don't. Okay, so when I was young, I would go to, music venues and watching live bands and DJs and things in Hongdae, but now I don't. I used to listen to loud music, but now I like quiet music. I used to live in Ilsan, but now I live in Seoul. I used to work at SNUE, Seoul National University of Education, but now I work at HUFS, Hanguk University of Foreign Education, Foreign Studies. I used to have long hair, but now I'm losing my hair. Okay, so here are some examples. Now, what you can also do is ask checking questions. So, do I live in Ilsan now? No. Okay, do I work at HUFS now? Yes. Okay, so you can ask some checking questions. Do I go out in Hongdae now? No. Did I go out in Hongdae before? Yes. Okay, so checking questions. Okay, so we've looked at some examples. Now, these are older students. These could be adult students. So, after providing a few examples, helping them to understand the meaning, they can start getting into creating their own examples. Okay, so here's a little task for you. How about you? Make 3 or 4 sentences and share with your partner. Okay, so give some time. Students make some sentences. Now, this is good because it gives some thinking time, and it's really important to give thinking time. Don't straight away ask students, what did you used to do, right? You haven't given them any time to kind of digest and internalize this new language. So give them some thinking time, let them think and write. This also gives you a chance to monitor and check and suggest if any students are having any problems, okay? So you give some time. When students are ready, then they can get into groups and they can share the sentences that they made. So that's controlled practice, and especially with thinking time. Okay, so now we've done examples about ourselves. Now let's do examples about other people. So here are some examples. My son used to love trains. He used to collect Thomas toys. He used to ride his kickboard every day. And he used to play basketball. Okay, again, you can ask checking questions. So does he collect Thomas toys now? When did he ride his kickboard? Okay, what sport did he play? Okay, and then again, some controlled practice where students have some thinking time. So choose a person that you know, maybe a family member or a friend, somebody that you know well, maybe children if it's adults, and make 3 or 4 sentences and then share them with your partner. Okay, so again, controlled practice. Okay, so now we're moving towards free practice and personalizing. So here are some discussion questions. I've chosen these because they're very easy to answer. They're very kind of general kind of questions. So what is a food that you used to hate but now you like? Who used to be your hero when you were young? Who used to be your favorite singer when you were young? Did you used to have a pet? What used to be your favorite game to play? Where did you used to play as a child? And what was Korea like when you were a child? Okay, so students can get into groups, they can randomly choose the questions and just practice discussing and using used to. I used to have a blah, blah, blah. I used to play here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so giving them some time for free, personalized practice. Okay, right, so we've done some personalized practice, some controlled practice, and we've talked about ourselves and family members. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to take the grammar but extend it to kind of a new topic. The grammar is the same. Now, that's important when you're teaching a grammar lesson. You can change the topics, right? You can move around different topics. But if it's a grammar lesson, if you're scaffolding one specific form of grammar or a few forms of grammar, you can change the topic, but the grammar should stay the same. Okay, so what we're going to do next now is have a look at these people. This is John and Mary. They are visiting Seoul. Can you tell them about the history of Seoul and traditional Korean life? So we're going to practice explaining traditions of Korea to a foreigner. And I often use this kind of technique when I'm teaching adults and older learners. This technique of, okay, imagine that a foreigner asks you a question, or imagine that a foreigner is visiting and you have to explain something to them. Because this is quite authentic, right? If you think about when Koreans use English, often it's going to be with kind of visiting foreigners or, you know, people asking about Korea. So as much as possible, you know, work that into your lessons. Okay, so this is real world practice and it has a context, right? We have an audience, John and Mary, that we're going to talk to. Okay, so, right, so let's think about what are we going to tell John and Mary about traditional Korean life. Here are some examples. Now, notice I'm giving lots of examples. It's really important that you model, right? You should be modeling the language. So here are my examples. This used to be the main train station in Seoul. Okay, so have a look at the picture. You can see this used to be the main train station in Seoul. Korean kids used to play in the street, and we used to live in a house called a hanok. Okay, so those are my examples about traditional Korean life. So what would be interesting to tell John and Mary? Think of some interesting things to tell them about traditional Korean culture or the history of Korea. Think about Korean food, clothes, buildings, life, etc. Okay, so give students some time. If they're a little bit lower level, you could have them working together on this. If they're a little bit higher level, they could be doing this individually. Okay, so when we get to the end, Right, let's share what you want to tell John and Mary. Okay, so have students reporting back to the class. Okay, so notice the grammar is the same here, but we've just kind of shifted the topic and shifted the context slightly to extend the practice of the same grammar. Okay, now I've got a couple more things to show you, because this grammar point is actually very similar to another grammar point. So what I want to do now is kind of contrast the grammar that we've just learned with a very similar structure that's actually quite different. Okay, so but I used to and I am used to are different. Okay, so when we say I am used to, it's not the same as used to. So to be used to something and used to are not the same. I'm going to show you some examples in a moment, but what I'm doing here is just kind of raising their awareness or drawing their attention to some similar grammar. Okay, so here are some examples with be used to. This means familiar or comfortable with something. Okay, so I was used to driving on the left in England, but now I am used to driving on the right. Okay, so I was familiar with that, and now I am familiar with driving on the right. Okay, I am used to getting up early to take my son to school. Okay, so I've become more and more comfortable and familiar with that. I am used to using a Mac computer, so Windows confuses me. Okay, so I usually use a Mac computer. That is what I'm comfortable with. So I'm not comfortable with a Windows computer totally. Okay, so again, some controlled practice. How about you? What are you used to now? Something that you've become familiar or comfortable with. Make some sentences and share with your partner. Okay, so that's a little bit of practice just to check that students understand and they can use this slightly different form. Okay, the last two slides are just like a little bit extra. You don't always have to contrast grammar with something with other similar forms. Yeah, so I hope that was an interesting lesson and you've got some ideas about modeling examples, setting contexts, and also shifting the context. I think that's a really important part of this example lesson. So I hope that was useful. Thank you very much.